The sun was lowering itself across the prairie like an ember dying slowly, its glow painting the land in deep golds and dusty reds. Rancher Colt Marston had spent most of his adult life believing silence was a friend and solitude a shield. After losing his family to a winter sickness years ago, he had built his ranch with his own hands, filling the emptiness with hard work, long rides, and the occasional talk with his horses. But on that strange, scorching evening, something broke the rhythm of his lonely world. Through a drifting curtain of heat, he saw a young Apache woman stumbling across the dry field, her legs trembling, her skin streaked with dust and sweat, her braid broken and loose against her back. She collapsed just a few yards from his barn, clutching her shoulder as though she had walked 100 miles just to make it here. Colt didn't run toward people, he ran away from them, but something in her exhaustion froze his breath. He knelt beside her as she whispered in a faint, cracking voice, "Please, don't leave me alone out here. I can't live without a man." Those words surprised him, not because of what she said, but because of the desperation behind them. She wasn't begging for ownership. She wasn't pleading for rescue the way settlers imagined. There was something else, something deeper hidden, in the way her eyes searched his, as though she was running from a shadow only she understood. Colt carried her inside his cabin, giving her water slowly so she wouldn't choke, placing a blanket over her trembling frame. She was young but strong, with the scars of survival marking her arms like symbols of a life too hard for her age. When she finally regained enough strength to speak, her story cut through the room like a blade. Her name was Niena, daughter of a wandering Apache healer. Her band had been scattered after a raid by outlaw hunters who stole women to sell. Across the Mexican border, her mother had been struck down, and Niena had fled into the desert with only instinct to guide her toward the nearest sign of life, even if that life belonged to a man like Colt. "I don't mean I need a man for living," she clarified, her voice trembling as she stared into the fire. "I mean I can't live another night alone with no one to watch my back. The desert is full of men who look at an Apache woman like she's a prize." Colt felt something shift inside him. He had spent years believing his cabin was safer with only his shadow in it. Yet here was someone who had fought far harder than he ever had, someone whose strength came not from being alone, but from refusing to fall apart. He told her she could stay for the night, just the night. He insisted, but he knew even then that she would not be leaving by morning. The prairie wind screamed that night, rattling the cabin walls, but inside a strange calm settled, between two souls who had never planned to meet, yet somehow fit the same kind of brokenness. Colt watched her fall asleep by the fire, her breathing slow and steady now, and he realized something he had spent years avoiding. Loneliness wasn't something he carried, it was something that carried him, and Niena, without trying, had cut through it simply by needing a place to breathe. Before he turned in for the night, he whispered something he hadn't spoken to anyone in years. "You're safe here, as long as you need." And though he didn't know it yet, that promise would tie their fates in ways the wild, unforgiving West would soon challenge. If you're enjoying this Wild West drama, make sure you subscribe because bigger twists are coming next chapter. Morning rose over the ranch with an uneasy stillness, the sky pale and heavy with the kind of tension that makes horses restless. Colt stepped outside to chop wood, trying to ground himself, but every echo from the axe reminded him that Niena was inside. Usually, no living soul breathed under his roof but him. When he returned, he found her feeding the fire, her movements graceful yet alert, like someone who had never known peace long enough to sit still. She thanked him for the water, for the shelter, for choosing not to turn her away like so many settlers would have. But Colt noticed the way her eyes drifted to the window every few minutes, scanning the horizon. Something, or someone, was still following her. "They don't stop," she finally admitted when Colt asked. "Outlaws who take women like game animals. They know I escaped. They always come back for what they think belongs to them." Colt's jaw tightened as he realized her danger was now his danger too. He had lived with ghosts of the past, but she lived with predators of the present. And yet he didn't hesitate. He saddled his horse, loaded his rifle, and rode out to study the tracks near the edge of his land. Sure enough, fresh hoofprints cut through the soil, 3 riders not far behind. When he returned, Niena watched him carefully, reading his silence the way someone who survived violence always did. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly, but Colt shook his head. "Nobody should have to fight alone." That simple answer, unexpected, unpolished, honest, made her breath catch. For years, Nienna had believed no white rancher would care whether she lived or died. But Colt wasn't protecting her because she was helpless. He was doing it because she deserved someone in her corner. The outlaws came at dusk, 3 shadows riding in from the north, armed and hungry for cruelty. Colt stepped out onto the porch with his rifle slung over his shoulder, his stance steady, his eyes cold. "She's not here for taking," he said. "Turn around," the men laughed, thinking he was just another rancher with more courage than sense. But they didn't understand that Colt Marston had once lost everything, and he wasn't about to lose someone again. The standoff cracked open into gunfire, a violent storm that shattered the quiet plains. Nienna crouched behind a stack of barrels, watching Colt fight with a rage she hadn't expected from a man who barely spoke. He wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for her freedom, something most men wouldn't risk a bullet for. When the dust settled, 2 outlaws fled bleeding into the prairie. The third lay face down in the dirt. Colt stood over him, breathing hard, the rifle still smoking. Nienna walked forward, her steps slow, her voice trembling. "Said I couldn't live without a man, but I didn't mean it like the world thinks." Colt looked at her, confused. She placed a hand on his chest, feeling the tremors of battle still shaking through him. "I meant I couldn't live in a world where every man is cruel. I needed to know one good man still existed." Colt swallowed hard, because in that moment he understood. She hadn't come to him seeking rescue. She had come seeking proof of kindness, and somehow without trying he had given her that. Days passed, then weeks. Nienna helped around the ranch, tending the horses, gathering herbs, mending the small things Colt never bothered with. She brought life back to the silent cabin, laughter to spaces where only echoes had lived. And Colt, who once believed solitude was safer, found himself unable to imagine the ranch without the sound of her footsteps or the warmth of her presence. "You can stay," he finally told her one evening as they watched the sunset burn across the plains. "Not because you need a man, but because maybe I need someone too." Nienna smiled, a soft, healing smile that made the whole ranch feel alive again. And from that day on, the lonely rancher and the wandering Apache girl built something the West rarely offered: hope. If you want more powerful Wild West stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe, because the next tale will be even more thrilling, emotional, and unforgettable.